right, let's cross our fingers and hope that this this just works for us. I'm going to turn off my mic and camera in Google Meet. All right, guys. So here we are in YouTube. In YouTube, hopefully we're working, and this is Photoshop. Let's open up a new document here. Okay, we'll go 8.5 by 11. We'll go for landscape orientation. Okay, so we have this. All right, so what we want to do is we want to have a some method for drawing characters in a predictable way, and some kind of reference point that we can always go back to when we're making a character. So we might run into situations at times. Guys, my computer is having a total meltdown. My stylus is not even working anymore. Oh my goodness. Hold on. Cisco WebEx. What is that? Why is that running? Okay. I'm just going to see if I can restart my Wacom service. And if this doesn't work, I might have to switch machines, switch to my laptop or one of my other computers. Yeah, this is crazy. Okay, let's try this. Restart. If you ever have like a problem, you can try going to W Tablet Service Pro in your services. Try restarting it. Sometimes it'll work. Let's cross our fingers. Hopefully it worked. There we go. Looks like we're good. Don't have pressure. I'll try closing Photoshop. I'm going to pivot a little bit, guys, today. I'm going to use TV Paint. TV Paint is generally a little bit more reliable in terms of Wacom settings. I just have to go back to a smaller screen scaling. Okay, now hopefully we're home free. Let's see. There you go. Pressure sensitivity is working. I tell you, if I could never use Photoshop, if I could get away with it, I would. And then same thing for Windows. It's like, okay. But here we are. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to make an 8 heads figure. Okay. 8. I want you guys to follow along. 8 heads figure. Okay. You can use Photoshop, right? You can use Krita. You can use Procreate. You know, you can draw this on paper. This doesn't matter. You don't need digital for this particular lesson. All right. So we're going to do an 8 heads figure. And basically what it is, we're going to start with a vertical line. Okay. I'm just doing this on a new layer just to kind of keep it somewhat organized. So just make a vertical line, and then effectively what we're going to do is just subdivide that line several times. So we want to find the halfway point on the line, right? Quarter points, and then eighth measures as well. Okay. Now I don't know how accurate this is. I'm just going to grab one of these. To be a little bit more accurate, I could do this. Just holding shift and kind of drawing upwards. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, get rid of this one. Use this one. Okay, I'll have one here, and I'll just make another one here. All right, so we're gonna just draw a basic. Start with just a male figure, front side, and time permitting, we'll do a female as well, front side, and just kind of look at some of the key differences. There's going to be these are going to be generalizations to some degree, like in terms of the difference between the male figure and the female figure. So take it with a grain of salt. It's just a starting point more than anything. Yeah, it will help us to kind of draw things that that seem more a little bit recognizable when other people are looking at it. All right, so we're going to start with these two lines. Just make sure we have 8 even divisions. All right, like so. We'll also talk about the head. We'll talk about the head, the front and side on the head, and the ratios, proportions, and what we can expect to see there, and then how we can kind of draw the head from the front and the side predictably as well. And then that's generally it. So we're going to start with this, and I'll just do a really quick version here. Okay, so generally speaking, we're going to have our head here. All right, we'll have a bit of a neck. We'll have the body. The body is about 3 heads wide. So the shoulders will be to that width. The chest and the level of the character's nipples will be at this second head line, right? So one head, two head, second head is the nipples. Third head is going to be the navel. Somewhere in here, we're going to have a rib cage. All right, we're going to have our waist here. We're going to have our pelvic structure in here. We don't have to worry about drawing a full pelvis for our purposes. Again, we're just going to draw a underwear shape. Okay, so we're just going to draw underwears. Okay, and this is going to sit right on the 4th head. The 4th head is just that that connection point of the legs. All right, like so. And this vertical line here is helping me stay symmetrical as best as possible. The legs connect to the body in an oblique way, so the leg would be kind of like that. All right. Okay, so our leg is going to kind of come down here. This 5th head, nothing for our legs to worry about here. This 6th head down, our knees actually sit on top of here. So let's just draw like a boxy structure here for our knees. And I'll go from my hip right down to that knee structure shape. And note that the leg is not it's not totally straight up and down. All right, we have a bone inside here, which is our femur, which angles like that. And that articulates with the pelvis. And then we have muscles in here, right? Muscles that connect from our pelvis to this bony protuberance of the bone of our femur here, and they have muscles that connect here and run down from our thigh bone here to our patella, or our patella tendon, which is our kneecap, which sits like right in here. Okay. So we have this. So we have, again, this blocky structure, and this is going to be made up by the bottom of our femur here. We have our patella, our kneecap bone, right, that sits on front. It floats on top, right, and it's connected up top with a bunch of strong tendons. And then down here we have the top of our tibia, okay, which is like the bigger ankle bone, or sorry, not ankle bone, but foreleg bone. We have two foreleg bones. One's the fibula, which is this little one on the side, and the big one is the tibia. And then, of course, we have our calf muscles here. Again, going really quickly here, and then here we'll have the wedge of our foot. Okay, and see how it's kind of more in the inside. It's a little flatter. On the outside, it flares out. Okay, we'll have our big toe, next toe, next toe, next toe. Something like that. Okay, our deltoid muscle here, it's going to go down. It's going to be a teardrop shape. It's going to go down to the same level of this this second headline, right? So it lines up with the nipples, like so. And then the elbow is going to line up with the navel. The fingertips will line up with the fifth headline down here. So halfway down the leg about, or halfway down the thigh, I should say. Again, this is not everybody, but this is just a kind of a nice starting point that we can utilize to just to remember, you know, basic proportions on the character. Okay, and of course this doesn't help us that much when we kind of have a character that is you know, tilted forwards. It does to a degree if we have like a character that's tilted forwards, but it's not as much help. It's more like if a character's like straight up and straight down, it kind of gives us like a good sense of what we might see. But this will help to inform, to some degree, like how we can set things up. And I'll point out a few things that, you know, might seem strange. Some of the proportions might seem a little bit off. I'm just going to start this arm just a little bit lower down, so that the arm doesn't seem like crazy long. Anatomy wise, the deltoid here overlaps the pectoralis here overlaps the deltoid muscle a little bit. The bicep here sits underneath the deltoid, like so. We have our clavicle. If you remember, our clavicle is how our body, or our arm connects to our body, so it actually connects here. Okay, and this is that clavicle. You can actually feel it. It's very prominent on the body. And then we have a very prominent like neck muscle here, the sternocleidomastoid, which connects from our sternum, right, which is this breastbone here in the middle. It's our sternum, our clavicle, so sterno, cleido, and then mastoid. There's a bone on our head called the mastoid process. And it connects to that. But this is our head. Okay, our eyes are halfway from the top of the head to the bottom of the head. Mouth is nose is halfway from the eyes to the chin. Okay, and then the mouth is slightly above halfway from the nose to the chin. Okay, hairline. It's going to step up from the ear here, step over. There's going to be like a diagonal line here from the this corner of our ear, or sorry, our hair, to the peak of our eyebrow, the arch of our eyebrow. And then it's going to step across like so. Okay, eyelids. Generally speaking, we have our eyeball. We have our eyeball, which is obviously a spherical form. We have our iris, and then we have our pupil. Human body is really well designed to conserve energy. Let me make sure. Okay, we're still going. The human body is really well designed to conserve energy, so the eyelid, generally speaking, only opens wide enough to kind of reveal the so we can see through our this window of our pupil, right? Our pupil is basically an opening into the eye, and if this is covered, we can't see. All right, so our eyelid, generally speaking, when we're resting, will open that much. If you're really kind of amped up or something, your eye might be like this. Oops. You might see the whites of your eyes, and this is if you're like very excited or something like that. That will see that. If you're on some medications or something, your iris might be like very, or your pupil might be very dilated. It might be like big, open like that. If it's a very bright light, your pupil will be very small. So these are different things that we can kind of do when drawing an eye to kind of suggest different emotions or different states or different things like that. Okay. And there's this interesting relationship in the eye, where the peak at the top is kind of the belly of that curve here is more towards the inner part, and at the bottom it's more towards the outer part, like so. So we kind of have that oblique relationship there. So these offset curves, okay, in our eye shape. Okay. So when I'm drawing the eye, that's what I'm thinking about. Make sure I have a brush that is the correct size. Alright, so that's basically how we draw our character. This will get the trapezius in here. So this is the muscle in the back here. And our neck is in front. Remember, Y lines. So we have our neck in front, our trapezius in the back. Just put some cross contour lines here to suggest how this goes. There's a bit of a cavity here with our trap at the back, clavicle here in the front, right? Our deltoid here on the side, and our pectoralis muscle here in the middle. There's usually a little triangular notch here with the clavicle on top, pectoralis in the inside part, and then the deltoid here on the outside part. You can actually feel that on your body. If you feel towards the edge of the distal part of your clavicle here, towards the side, you'll feel that there's a little cavity there, generally speaking. A little triangular shaped notch. Clavicle on top, pec below, and then deltoid here on the side. All right, so that's basically how we can draw a character. We have a bicep here. Okay, and then we have obviously our forearm here. Some things you may or may not be confused about, but just to demystify and give you a couple tips here. When we draw the arm, the hand, and let's just kind of copy this over. I think that foot is a little on the big side, but we'll just simply copy this over to the other side, like so. But yeah, those feet are like actually gargantuan. I got a little too overzealous there when I drew these feet. Okay, so 8 heads is not super normal. You know, some people might be like 8.5 heads even, but generally speaking, you know, the average is, and I don't know who came up with this. This is like what I got out of a book, like, you know, probably made in the 50s or something. So who knows what normal and average was to them, but 7.5 heads is the kind of the standard, like what it would actually be, and then 8 heads is it's just a little easier to remember, easier to work with, and that's kind of how that works. Okay, so that is the super quick rundown. We'll go back through this and take our time a little bit. I want you guys to follow along and do your own, but that is the general idea. That's where we're going. I'll also quickly do the side view. Okay, and we could, of course, draw lines across, horizontal lines, like so. Okay, and before we jump into the side view, there's a couple things we want to be mindful of. Let's talk about the head a little bit more in depth right now. The head's ratios. Okay, it's 2 to 3. Okay, so the front, the width is about 2 units, and the height is about 3 units. Okay, so when drawing the head, generally speaking, we want to kind of just start with a sphere, spherical shape for the cranium. Okay, and that's just obviously going to have a, we can just do a 2 to 2 ratio here so that it's kind of, it fits inside of a square, and then for the jaw, it'll just kind of drop down off the sides of off this initial form, off that initial sphere. Okay, and that's going to be the general shape of our head. Okay, and then from the side, our head is going to have a bit more of a 1-to-1 ratio. It's going to be a bit more square shaped from the side. our skull, our cranium, is going to be more of a oval shape here, like that, in our top box. In the front, we can say it's pretty flat, right? Like this. And then our jaw kind of steps back and up, goes about halfway. Okay, halfway from the front to the back. We get our jaw. We also get our ear coming out of that same halfway line. Let's say this is 3 and this is 3. All right. The eyes, again, are about halfway. Okay, halfway from top to bottom. We're going to get our eyes. And then generally speaking, our eyes, okay, they're going to be on this half line, but how big do we make them, right? Is our eye like this big and this big? Of course, if we're doing a cartoony stylized character, we can absolutely do that. We can do whatever we want, right? And I want you guys to feel like, yes, if you wanted to do that, you could absolutely do that. There's nothing stopping you. But if we want to do something a little bit more realistic, then we want to be conscious of how big should those eyes be. And so they should actually be about 1/5 of the width of the entire head. So that's actually pretty simple. We can have one eye width in between our eyes, an eye width here, an eye width here, and then one eye width from the corner of our eye to the side of the head. Okay, and that's a little on the big side. Okay, so we can have 5 eyes across. Something like that will do the trick. Okay, so that basically tells you how big the eyes should be and where the eyes should be. Of course, this is just a guideline. We can, of course, tweak or adjust from here. But this is kind of the our starting point, our jumping off point. Okay, and like I said, the nose is going to be halfway between our eye line and our chin. Okay, so our nose here will be about there. Okay, and that's just where the base of our nose lies. Okay, and when we draw noses, a lot of times it's more about suggestion versus detailing everything else. So you want to imply it. How you imply it is going to be up to you, and it's also going to be dependent on the character's nose. So if the character's nose is like very bulbous, you know, you can kind of draw a lot of it. But if the character's nose is very faint, you might just have a slight line here, and then maybe more of a shadow to suggest the nose is there than anything. A lot of that's going to come down to style, design choice, and just feel and experience. What are you doing that looks right to you? And what are you doing that doesn't look as right? All right. Okay, but for realistic, this is kind of what we want to do. And again, the eye, you know, generally doesn't reveal the white of the eye above the iris. Okay, and it usually opens enough to just reveal the pupil. Okay, different people have different kinds of folds on their eyelids. Some people have no fold. Some people have a fold. It's all different. A lot of it depends on like nationality and things like that, or ethnicity. You know, it's fun to kind of look at different faces from around the world and kind of see similarities and differences, and you know, be able to draw that. Okay, our brow here. This kind of comes down to like understanding where the skeletal structure is. The skeleton has like a big kind of ocular cavity here that our eyeballs sit inside of. And this really informs some of the bone structure of our face. Like you can feel underneath your eyes, like the socket of your eyeball. You can feel above your eyes, the socket of your eyeball. And then, generally speaking, our brow will sit on top of that. Okay. When we get to that point, we'll talk about it, but I'll even touch on it now. Generally speaking, again, generalization, on a female, there is going to usually be a little bit more space between the eye here and the eyebrow. You can exaggerate that, right? And make the eyebrows a little bit more arched. Okay, and then in the male, again, not everybody's the same, but sometimes the brow is like really tight to the eye, right? And the from the side it sticks out more, it juts out more. So the eye is like more sunken in. All right. Versus foreshortening comes into play here as well, just in terms of the way I am doing the brow, the eyebrow. It wraps around the form. You can almost imagine the ocular cavity being like this and the eyeball sitting inside the eye ocular cavity like so, and the front of the eyeball being here and the eyelid draping around that form, right? And then this is the top of the brow, right? And then that brow wraps around that form as well. Okay, and once we understand how the skeleton is, it actually really helps inform a lot, like even just the way the nose ridge goes, because there's a nasal cavity here as well. So we have the bone, an opening, we all know what a skeleton looks like, but then we have this cartilage for the rest of the nose that sits in front. Okay, some people have a bit more of a bump here on the nose, and that's just kind of their it's just how their cartilage connects in together with their nasal cavity. So some people have a little bit more of a bump on their nose. Some people would be like not prominent whatsoever. And it really just kind of comes down to how your bone structure is and what kind of skeleton you have underneath, right? Some people have a flatter face when seen from the side, and some people have a more kind of like in and out kind of pronounced features on their face from the side. Anyways, so coming back, we have this. Let's get our mouth. Again, the mouth is about a third, let's say a third of the way down, or we could say halfway down, but like favor the nose side a little bit. Okay, and that's the center of the mouth. So the opening of the mouth. And of course, we've seen, you know, everyone comes in all different kinds of configurations. We've of course seen people whose mouths are further down, right? Further up, right? But we just want to have a jumping off point, like I said. Something to work with. I think this eye line, I think I didn't quite get it halfway. I think I favored the top a little bit too much. I'm just going to pull this down ever so slightly and yeah, it just reads a little bit better. I think my ratios were off there. I eyeballed it and I was off. Be careful that if you're eyeballing it, it's a good chance you'll be off and it'll look wrong to you, and you won't know why, and it'll just be that very subtle and small, minute shifts and changes, especially in a face, will make a drastic difference in terms of appearance. We're so good at like seeing faces and recognizing people based on the smallest, subtlest millimeter variation. Distance between the eyes, or size of the eyes, or how high the eye is on the face, or low the eye is on the face, how wide the nose is, how high the nose is, how much space there is between the nose and the mouth. We're really attuned to those things. So the tiniest change, it's like that story, The Princess and the Pea. A princess, you could tell it's a real princess if you put a pea under like 17 layers of a mattress, and she can feel that when she's sleeping, it's a princess. But for us, for people, we're so good at just kind of seeing faces and recognizing faces that those tiny subtle variations, they'll be very apparent to us. Okay. So the ears, generally speaking, the top of the ear lines up with the eyebrow, and the bottom of the ear lines up with the nose. So you have something like that. Okay, so it's kind of like an order that we can draw things in when we're doing this. And like I said, the brow, the hairline, it's going to step up from the sideburn there at the ear. It's going to go up a little bit, and then it's going to peak in, right? And there's going to be this oblique relationship between it and the arch of the eyebrow, and then it's going to go up, step across. And this is like, when I say hairline, this is basically like where the hair sprouts from, on the head. So if you're drawing hair, you want to start there, and then if you have long sweepy hair, it kind of goes from there. Like you have your hair kind of originates from that part, right? If you have curly hair like me, then it's even easier. All right. Okay, so that's generally speaking, if you had a buzz cut, this is what it would kind of where that hairline would be. Again, generalization, not everybody's like this. It's a jumping off point. And the last thing you want to do is draw every single character exactly the same. Some people do, and that's fine. And they have a formula, it works, and they just stick with it. Totally fine. But it's good to tweak things up or mix things up and know how you can and still have the character look human or even realistic. Okay, and of course you can add things like facial hair to kind of make your character, it kind of looks like Johnny Depp to me a little bit, to kind of appear a certain way, right? And that's basically it. Let's do the side. So the side, don't get Egyptian itis, right? Where you draw the eye from the front on the side. The eye gets foreshortened too. The eye is mainly on the front of the face. So from the side, the eye kind of looks like Pac-Man's mouth. I can't think of a better term. A wedge, a pie slice, I guess. That's a good term. From the side. Probably getting a little on the cartoony side here in terms of the size of that eye. Probably don't want to make it too big. But generally speaking, eye is going to be like that. Brow, again, will be very... So this part here from the front would look like that. So that bend from the side looks more like this. Right? Because it's wrapping around a form. Okay, it's turning around a surface. if that makes sense. So these lines are now becoming these rounded out lines. Okay, so this brow kind of goes like that. When we see it from the side, test it out. Take a picture of yourself from the side view, or just look at a picture of a person from the side and see how they look. The nose here, halfway again from the eye level to the chin. Okay, and that's the base of our nose. So our nose is going to sit in there. All right, and then the mouth will be about, let's say, just less than half of the way down from the nose to the chin. That's to the center of the mouth. And the mouth is going to sit on a bit of a mound. It's not flat to the face. It's going to be, there's a thickness to the lips, and then there's a roundness usually to the teeth that sit underneath, and that the lips have to sit on top of that. So we have this kind of jutting out. I don't want to overdo it here. Reference is always helpful with this kind of stuff as well. Just help you get a more believable, accurate take on things. The relationship here between the nose and the chin, if you want to make an appealing design, is always kind of useful to be mindful of. All right, so we have this arch here from the nose down to the chin. Okay, and from the side, sometimes we'll get it's kind of the zygomatic arch here, the cheekbone. Right, sometimes we'll see it on the side, and it'll kind of even come down into some muscles that we have down here in the jaw, the masseter muscles. Okay, and again the ear, bottom of the nose to the eyebrow. And the ear starts about halfway back on the head. Okay, I'm not going to show you guys specifically how to draw the ear. I'll leave that to you guys to kind of research and figure out if you want to do it. It just takes a little bit of practice to kind of get familiar with the forms, but there's definitely a pattern there. All right, and then the hairline, just like we did here, right? It's going to come up, all right, step across, and be something like that. Our neck is going to emerge like so. And on a male character, we're going to have an Adam's apple. As well. Okay. So that's effectively that. That's a really kind of super quick kind of quick dive into drawing front view, head. We've got side view. Let's quickly do our side view, body, and then we'll go slower. What we'll do, we'll just go quickly through the male figure here, and we'll take our time when we do a female. We'll do the same thing. Okay, but let's do the side view. So we kind of know how the head works here. Okay. One of the important things to do when we're doing the side view is to really make sure that we capture the curvature of the spine. There's definitely an S curve to the spine. If we don't put that in here, this will look very wrong. So we want to make sure that we have that. And one of the easiest ways is actually, and it's more important from the side view than the front view. Kind of alluded to this rib cage structure here. Okay, if you remember, the rib cage here is tapered up top, so it's very acorn shaped. Like so. Okay, and there's an opening here where the our esophagus goes through, our vocal cords go through, our brachial tubes go through, and so there's this like opening in the top of our rib cage. Our rib cage protects all our internal organs. It protects our heart and our lungs and everything like that. But then there's this opening here so that you know, we can get to the head, and there's a spinal column running along the back. But yeah, so the skull is kind of like this. It's kind of a grin to those teeth. Okay, and then we have our spinal column, which goes here, like so. We have some muscles here in the back, which allow us to tilt our head backwards. We have all our throat stuff in here in the front, right? Our esophagus and all that. Our nose is gonna just kind of sit here, like that, and our lips will be here. Eyeball in the ocular eye socket there. Eyelid will drape over. Eyebrow. Ear. You'll notice the zygomatic arch here. It kind of comes back, and then there's a little opening, a little here, a hole here, and that's basically the I believe it's the ear canal, and that just kind of that's where our basically where the sound goes when we're listening to things. All right, so we have our skull, and then we have our rib cage. So remember last week we talked about the boxes. So here we actually want to have those boxes. That'll help us to get that rhythmic shape between our spine and our spinal cord. So we can it arches back here, and then it dips in here, and then it kind of swings back out here, and then so we have this relationship between our pelvic box and our rib cage box. Our rib cage points upwards, our pelvis points kind of downwards. Maybe not as extreme as what I have here, but you know, definitely get that those tilts in there. And that'll just help you get the all this looking properly. And again, we have our underwear shape, so this pelvis really just turns into like underwear shape. We're not going to worry about drawing the actual pelvis. We do have the buttocks here at the back, right? It's gonna, depending on the person, jut out more or less, right? And so we'll have that, and then we have the legs. Again, the legs connect to the pelvis at an oblique angle. The belly of the leg kind of juts out forwards. It's a little straighter on the back, right? We have our quadricep muscles here on the front, and they're pretty bulky, and then we have our hamstring on the back. It's a little kind of flatter. There is a bit of a curve to it, but nothing super crazy. And then we'll have the buttocks here. All right, you can draw through. Okay, underwear. So kind of get this kind of a structure. Okay, and then we have our knees, right? That's more of a blocky shape, all right, which we have here, right? Blocky shape. And then we have our foreleg, pretty straight. Our shin is pretty flat and straight at the front. Okay, if we're simplifying it. And then we have the belly here on the back of our calf muscle, which is called the gastrocnemius muscle, like so. Okay, we got a little fibula. This is the bone of our fibula. Right, this little bone on the side. And then our tibia will be the bigger bone on the other side of the on the other side of the leg. Okay, so we have something like that going for the feet, or for the legs, sorry. So kind of just plot that out here. Okay, as remember the knee, the whole upper leg and the knee sit on top of this 6-head line. Okay, if you do this wrong, the thigh will look way too long. So if you make a mistake and you try to make it like this, the thigh will look like exceedingly long, calf will look too short, your proportions will be thrown off. All right. So it's important to remember that the knee is kind of pretty kind of packed up. It's stuck up here. Calf comes down. Okay. And like I said, the ratios feel maybe sometimes a little off with this 8 heads figure. Maybe the legs feel a little too long. And a lot of times that's just because you know, it is an idealized ratio, just because it's easier to work out. You can always cheat it after the fact. Once you've drawn it, you can make those legs just a little shorter, you know, if it looks too unnatural to you. Oops, I don't know what I did. All right, and like I said, about 7.5 heads is a little bit more believable, realistic. All right, so that's about 7.5 there. But 8 heads, just easier to work with. Okay, so let's continue on here. So let's get the kind of abs. So we have our belly here. We have a little bit of a thickness here. There's some muscles in the back, our longest muscles that run up and down from the pelvis to the back of the spine and the rib cage. And that helps us kind of like lean backwards. We're gonna have our shoulder, right? This teardrop shape of our deltoid. We're gonna have our pectoralis. We're gonna have a sternocleidomastoid here. It basically runs for the base of the ear, diagonally forward here to our sternum, right? And our clavicles in the front. And we have our pectoralis muscle, which sits in the front here, right? Sits on top of the rib cage. And it runs like that. Remember, the nipple is going to be on that line, so we need to just maybe bring that down a little further. And yeah, and then that's basically it. We'll have our any kind of like body stuff going like that. The muscles here at the back. We're going to have our scapula, which sits on the back here. As well, and then our arms will kind of come down. Again, the elbow is on this 5th line, which is also our navel, right? Character's navel. and the hands are going to go down to the sixth, sorry, yeah, to the fifth headline here. That's where our hands will be. Okay, so that's effectively it. You can kind of tweak the size of things just a little bit, like on the head there, to make it look a little bit more believable. But that is generally the idea that we want to convey. Understanding where the bones are helps a lot, because again, things like the knees here, we really have a good sense of that. We can understand this oblique nature of the pelvis. We can understand why is it kind of tapering in like that. It's because they have the greater trochanter of the femur, which is up here, right? We're going to have all these muscles in here as well, which help pull our legs inwards towards each other. And yeah, and that's basically that. So that's our front and side 8-head figure of the male. Let's do another one, and we'll do a female character, and we'll just kind of look at some of the differences. Let's also, before we do that, just quickly revisit the skeleton. And remember, you can find this on Canvas. Under Resources, Anatomy. Now let's just kind of do another quick recap. So some hand stuff here that we want to be aware of. One thing to be notice for the hand, the pinky side of the hand is pretty tight to the, it's pretty much a straight line from the pinky to the elbow. There's a bit of a dip here, but there's a more pronounced kind of flaring out of the hand on the thumb side. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like. But you notice how it's kind of, you could simplify this to a straight line, or maybe a C-curve line and then a straight line. This would be a straight and then another straight, right? There's a clear bend here that we can de-emphasize here. We could kind of keep this simple and make this side more complex, right? Definitely very present when we're drawing our characters. This is really, really useful to look at. Like, we can see here how the clavicle is the connection point of our arm, all right, and our whole arm system, like our shoulder blade, our humerus, and then our clavicle, and then our rib cage is just like, it's really like in the center there. It's really hidden, right? We can't see any of the top of the rib cage. It's very, very narrow. So all the width of the shoulders comes from simply our humerus, right, which is our upper arm bone, our clavicles, right, and our deltoid muscle, which sits on top, and then our scapula and the muscles that connect in from the humerus to the scapula, right? And even this muscle, or I think this is the teres major, big muscle that we can kind of see, and there's a latissimus muscle which also drops back and kind of drapes. It goes from the inner part of the humerus, and it drapes all the way down to the lower back. Again, just some comparative studies on a horse. You can see the bones here, and you can see the relationship from the bones to the muscles. Structural drawing of a figure here. We can see the rib cage there, though. And there's a lot of times going to be those bony landmarks, those surface landmarks that help guide us. Here we can see the parts that are present on the surface, like the redder parts here are the parts you can kind of feel underneath the skin. Everything else is like deeper to muscles or fat. Okay, fibula bone here, patella bone, as you can see. This blocky structure of the knee, all right, the bottom of the femur and the top of the tibia and fibula. Okay, again, the bones here box. Imagine a box around this skull, a box around the rib cage, a box around this pelvis, and see how these muscles just drape around the forms. And the funny thing is, sometimes the muscle names are very handy. They give us the names of the bones, like this sternocleidomastoid. So this is the sternocleidomastoid muscle, for example. It connects to the mastoid process of the cranium, and then it drapes down and connects into the sternum and the clavicle. Okay, here's our skeleton. So you can see that blocky structure of the knee, right? We can see all the meat that would be in here, all the abductor muscles, or abductor or adductor. All the muscles that connect in here and allow you to kind of pull your thighs together. And then we see that how this flares out, right, as it sits into the notch of the pelvis. And we can kind of rotate our leg freely. You can see that there's the range of motion is potentially capped based on the height of this. If I lift my leg up, it's going to connect here. It's going to touch the edge of the my pelvis. And so we can only go so high with our leg. All right. And pelvis, again, it's good to be able to know it and draw it and understand it. But we really can simplify it down to an underwear shape. Notice the curvature here of the spine, right? The clear S, bend. It's almost even a W. All right, it's got two reversals on it. And we see the box here for the rib cage and see how it tilts up. We see the box here for the pelvis. We can kind of see how it tilts down. Kind of see how the fingertips go about halfway down the thigh, like so, right? We can kind of see how the elbows line up with the navel about here. We can kind of picture the pectoralis muscles where it would kind of sit here. The end of the sternum here is a really good kind of landmark for us to understand where the pectoralis muscles go. They generally will go down to about here, kind of go here, and then kind of start draping back up and connecting to our humerus bone. So it's like a reversed fan shape, the pectoralis. The fibers here, the high fibers here in the middle, they connect low on our humerus, and the high fibers here on our humerus connect low on our against the sternum and the rib cage here. So it's like a muscle that as it goes on, it twists over itself, which is kind of interesting. Sternum, clavicles, right? Mastoid process here, sternum, clavicle. We have a diagonal muscle running here. You can actually feel it on your neck if you feel. And if you turn your head, you'll definitely feel it going. Right? Sorry, my camera's not working. Otherwise, I'd show you. But yeah, this is kind of like, let's gain some familiarity. Let's kind of look at how all this comes together. We can kind of look at this. It's not super duper accurate here. This rib cage is super tiny. Generally speaking, the rib cage will be a little bit bigger than that, but it's a really good study to help understand how these forms come together. Look how blocky that knee structure is. Okay. We can see how deep the top of the rib cage is to the surface of the body, and how what we really see is the pectoralis muscle, the deltoid muscle, and the latissimus muscle here in the back. We also get the teres major here, which connects from our scapula into our humerus bone. Right? These muscles kind of give us that triangle shape. If you look at a character from the back, or even from the front, you'll see this you'll see like a sandwich. You'll see the near slice, which is the pectoralis muscle. You'll see the middle slice, which is the rib cage here, and then you'll see the back slice, which will be the latissimus dorsi and the teres major. Okay, pelvis, legs, body. Okay, and there's comparative anatomy. Let's look at the skull momentarily. So you can see the nasal cavity there, the ocular cavities here, our zygomatic process, number 5. Okay, this guy here, this big bone that comes back. You can see the curvature here of the maxilla and the teeth, right, and how that is round. So you can imagine how the lips need to sit on top of that. Picture a an eyeball, a little globe, an eyeball sphere that sits in here in the ocular cavity, um, orbital cavity. Sorry, I'm calling it the ocular cavity. And then it can pivot and rotate freely. And then our eyelids are draped around that. Our eyebrows kind of drape around this brow form. You can actually feel your brow. Just touch your head, feel your brow, and you can feel how your eyebrow relates to that. Just it's right on top of that usually. Maybe it crosses on the inside part. It's lower, right, and then on the outside maybe it lifts above that that cavity. Again, everyone's a little different. Okay, we can see here the rib cage. How the rib cage basically stays fairly uniform. It's fairly stiff. The pelvic structure is fairly stiff. What bends is this our lumbar vertebrae. That's where we get a lot of our bending forward, back, side to side, and twisting in the body. It happens there. The muscles just kind of connect in, and they go along for the ride. You know, connect here, connect here. This twist is just going to kind of like be connecting the dots from one bony surface to the next bony surface. Okay. There's 24 vertebrae total, 5 lumbar vertebrae, 12 dorsal vertebrae, which are each connected to a rib, and then 7 cervical vertebrae, which goes from our, which is basically our neck. Okay, we get most of our articulation here in our neck and our lower back here, our lumbar vertebrae. Okay, these are big, heavy, load-bearing vertebrae. So basically, you know, if someone gets a slipped disc or something like that, they're lifting stuff that's too heavy. Usually one of these cushion pads kind of bulges out, or herniated discs. You can kind of see a lot of weight is supported down on these big lower vertebrae. So if you get a problem here, it's going to be, you know, something that you don't want to get, and something you don't want to deal with. It's going to be a lot of pain for you. Again, we looked at some comparative anatomy. You can see here again the ulna side connects into our pinky side. It's kind of a straight shot here from the elbow down to the pinky, so we can really simplify that. And then it flares out more here on the thumb side. Okay, again, good side view. To see that rib cage, see the scapula, how that sits in the humerus, where it is, the cervical vertebrae. See how the head here sits. We can kind of have that oblong shape here for the cranium, and then a wedge shape here for the jaw. And we see how the nose just sits in front. Okay. Again, notice that blocky structure, the bottom of our femur and the top of the tibia fibula, and the floating patellar tendon, or the patella, basically our kneecap floating there. Note when the leg bends, this here rotates, it slides across the surface of this bone. So you can almost imagine a pivot point right here at the base of the humerus, and then this will kind of just swing based on that. It's kind of like a hinge joint to some degree. So this will be here, and then this will just swing up and down. And you can even almost picture it here in this. Notice the backs of the, if you were to look at it, you'd notice that this is very round. It's like almost like a cylindrical kind of shape to it if you look at it from the side. And it's almost just like this can just slide smoothly across that form, the tibia, as it swings backwards. And the kneecap is just there to help stabilize the joint. So here's a great look at the skull. So again, you can imagine this, the zygomatic arch here we have. Here's the ocular cavity here. This is where our ear canal goes. So you can picture the ear kind of sitting like so, right? Base of the ear lining up with the nose, bottom of the nose. The top of the ear lining up with the brow ridge around there. We can picture how our eyeballs sit inside this eye socket, right? Both from the front and the side. And then we can see the roundness here of the teeth and the maxilla, and then imagine how the lips sit on top of that mound. The lips are also going to have a thickness to them, right? Some more than others, right? But that will kind of create a different form as well. Generally speaking, the opening of the lips is actually on the top row of teeth. The lips don't open here right in the center of my mouth from the outside. It's not going to be lined up here. It's actually going to be lined up more to the somewhere on the top set of teeth. Okay, and notice the ratios here. It's a little bit more 1-to-1. The height to the depth is pretty equal. And you can notice here from the front, the width to the height is it's about 2 to 3, right? It's a 2 to 3 ratio approximately. Okay, pelvis, good to be aware of. Again, I don't need you guys to really go super in depth in the pelvis. You can. My teacher really kind of drove it home for us. He really made us draw the pelvis over and over and over and over again. I'm glad he did, but eventually I realized, wait, we just need to draw underwear, and that'll kind of get the same sensibility for constructing characters. We can really simplify it. All right, so that's something I want you to just kind of like research, look at, and kind of try to get a good understanding of. So here we have our trapezius at the back, our traps, right? Our deltoid muscle, and again, when we're drawing muscles, it's very easy to think, oh, like these are just muscles. It's like almost these are like kind of squishy, kind of bulgy things that live on top of our body. But no, they're actually just connected. They're really just kind of, think of them as cables that are connecting different bones to each other. And when these cables compress, they can move the bones, and they move them along a lever, right? They have a pivoting point, right? So when these deltoids flex, because it's attached to this bone, and because the bone here has articulation here with the scapula, we can get our whole arm here to lift, right? And this will simultaneously compress while that is happening. Right, so we really want to think of not just, these are muscles, but we want to know where on the bone they insert into. Where does this muscle connected to the bone? Once we know that, drawing different poses actually becomes quite academic. It's just very straightforward. We can see the latissimus dorsi here in the back, right? So we have the sandwich, like I mentioned, pectoralis in the front, rib cage here in the middle, and then latissimus here at the back. Okay, another good example, pecs in the front, right? Again, the fibers on the pec, low fibers on the pec, they actually go higher, and it flips over itself over here. You can't really tell, but underneath here, it's going to connect up higher on the humerus, and then these higher fibers on the pectoralis, they connect lower on the humerus. So it's kind of this flipped fan kind of effect that we get. We have these really cool muscles, these interlocking muscles here. These are like my favorite muscles. This is the serratus anterior. They connect into the rib cage, and then they connect into the back of the scapula. These are the push-up muscles, or some of the push-up muscles. They allow us to kind of push our scapula forwards and backwards, or basically forwards, like push forwards. It helps our scapula slide forwards along our rib cage. And then we have these interlinked muscles. These are our external oblique muscles, and they really cover a large area. They fan all the way out down here, and kind of there's this bigger belly of the oblique muscle down here at the bottom. Okay, and then of course we have our abdominal muscles in here, etc. Our bicep here in the middle, our deltoid here on the outside. You can kind of sense that little notch that I was talking about here. So we have our clavicle, right? And it comes up, and then there's a little notch in between. Pectoralis here in the front, deltoid here out on the side, clavicle on the top, and there's this little depression here in the middle. Okay, sternocleidomastoid here, mastoid muscle or mastoid bone process here. You can see this nice kind of muscle that kind of extends down. You can see part of the fiber of that muscle connects here to clavicle. Part of it here connects to the sternum. Okay, and this is the muscle we use to help turn our head left and right. We can see the muscle here to the legs. Definitely see how the front of the leg, it connects into the iliac crest, or there's muscle fibers that connect to the iliac crest, and they influence the silhouette. So we have this nice S curve here, right? Straight line, potentially, or we could do a little C curve here, and then we could have a straight line here for the front of the tibia, and then we can have a nice bulge here. So we have straight against curve, right? A lot of these things that we talk about in design, they actually occur naturally in the human body. You know, I think maybe just because we're designed to appreciate the human body, maybe seeing straights and curves in design makes us automatically appreciate designs that have that built in as well. What we also get is simple versus complex, right? So simple, this side is more complex, right? This side's simpler, this side is a little more complex. What else? And you see, like what I mentioned, we kind of have like a straight shot here from the groin down to the foot, right? You can kind of simplify this into a straight line. And we can imagine two bulges here on the outside. All right, two C's. Okay, and again, we'll just see here the structure, the bulky structure of the bottom of the femur and the top of the tibia and the fibula, and what that looks like. Okay, and we can see that the kneecap is here, and you notice that there's like two bumps on the knee. Can I zoom in on this? There's two bumps on the knee, the top one, and there's a little bottom one. The top one is our kneecap. The bottom one is actually our it's a protuberance on our tibia bone. Well, I'll have to show you in the bones, but for the arm, that we have our deltoid here up top. This is that upside down teardrop shape, right? Our bicep sits just underneath that. Then we have our brachioradialis muscle here, or sorry, brachio. I'm gonna get the muscles wrong. I'm gonna wait till I can see a diagram. There's a brachialis. There we go. So this is our extensor carpi radialis longus, right? And then just next to that is our brachioradialis. These are very, very distinctive muscles that we see in the arm, right? And then we'll usually see this landmark of like this kind of V shape, right? This bend here, and then we also see this overlap of our at the bottom of our bicep as we get into the forearm, and then we'll see like maybe sometimes this other shape or a couple other lines emerging from that, and that's going to give us our extensor muscles. It's interesting to note there's not a lot of muscles in our hand. All the muscles that generally control our hand exist in the forearm, and then they just have these long pulleys and cables, which are ligaments that connect into the fingertips and each of the different joints. So we have like different ones that one will connect to the first phalange, one to the second phalange, and then one to the third phalange. And we'll have one to each of our carpal bones and metacarpal bones. So there's not a lot of like muscles in the hand, especially the fingers. It's just the muscles are way up here and they kind of run down. It's almost like it makes me think of a piano or something like that. But it's funny. Like the human body is remarkable. It's remarkable, like in terms of like the engineering of it. It's just phenomenal. It seems so, not just the human body, like any creature. It's just like incredible how sophisticated the mechanisms are. So here we have a much clearer read on the brachioradialis and the what was the name of that one? Extensor digitorum. No, sorry, the extensor carpi radialis longus. When I was in school, I made it my mission to memorize every single muscle, every single bone. And I'll be honest with you, when it got to the forearm muscles, I kept falling asleep, I couldn't. Just so like, oh my gosh. So I just remember the big groups and kind of understood what they did, and that was enough. But yeah, so here's another kind of good reference. So we can see these two muscles here, and we can see how there's a deep cavity, and then these other two big muscles emerge from there. And we have our tricep, the classic horseshoe of our tricep muscle. And then the upside down teardrop shape of our deltoid. Okay. And again, these muscles become much easier to draw once we know where they connect into, when we see the relationship to the bone. So this is not just like a floating on the surface, it's actually connected really deep, and just like interconnectedness between all these muscles. So it drapes over top of the humerus, but then it connects in here along the humerus. So wherever this goes, this is going to go along with it, right? So if this guy raises up, the deltoid is going to lift up with that. Okay, this is our latissimus muscle here. It's big muscle. It kind of connects into our humerus as well. Again, similar to the pectoralis, it flips over itself. It kind of flips. And on a bodybuilder, this is like a gigantic muscle. It makes them look like a giant V-shaped when you see them from the back or even from the front. The width of the upper body comes a lot from the latissimus muscles and the teres major muscle, which connects to the scapula. Okay, really clear diagram here. Okay, so you can see the chest muscles, the sternocleidomastoid, and you'll find that there's like certain muscles that are like, they're going to give you more mileage. Your serratus anterior, serratus anterior, as they interlock with our obliques, our abdominal muscles, of course. We see a bit of the rib cage here as well. We got our pectoralis muscles, our sternocleidomastoid muscles, our trapezius muscle here at the back, our deltoid here, our shoulder muscle. And then of course our bicep. This is the brachialis, and then the triceps here at the back. Bicep, by the way, means bi for two or double. I believe it's Latin. It's two muscles, two lobes to this muscle. Tricep is three, tri, right? So 3 lobes to the tricep muscle. All right, and here we go. Okay. Okay, and then we can see some of the muscles of the leg. We have our quadricep muscles, quad for 4. There's 4 lobes to the quadricep muscles, of the vastus medialis, the vastus lateralis, the rectus femoris, which is this kind of like cool one in the middle, right? I think these two are the most kind of like prominent. We notice that this shape here, we have a lobe here, a belly of a muscle down low, lifts up, right? We have a horizontal line that goes across, and then a belly of another muscle that is a little higher. And then we have, there's a deep muscle that we don't see, a deep part to the quads. I believe it's the vastus internalis or something like that. We don't ever see it. We only see these 3 different lobes: the vastus medialis, the rectus femoris, and the vastus lateralis. We have our sartorius muscle here, which connects to the inside of the thigh. It's kind of like a divider between our abductor muscle or adductor muscles, these big muscles that pull our legs together. and then our quadricep muscles here on the outside. We also have a key thing here, a tensor fascia latae muscle, which connects from our iliac crest of our pelvis, right? So part of our pelvis, the wing of our pelvis here, into our trochanter of our humerus. Humerus, not humerus. Sorry, femur. All right, and yeah, and so this is just kind of stuff to look at, familiarize yourself with. I strongly recommend doing some just sketches on these things, trying to familiarize yourselves and get comfortable with drawing all of this. It will be very, very helpful for you. And as an exercise, what we can do is we can even take a skeleton and then just try to draw the muscles over top. Okay. So that's what I recommend us doing. So let's get out of here. How do I get out of this? Close that. Let's grab a skeleton. I recommend this one. This one's going to be a little bit better. We'll just copy the image. Okay, and we'll bring this in. On a new layer. Okay, I'll knock down the opacity on this. Let's go another new layer above that. And then we can just go in and, bring up the references that we have there. But we can go in and we can kind of think about how to, simplify this. Okay, so the rib cage is kind of just this simple structure. We have our sternum here. We have our clavicles. Okay, and when we do this, we can see that our clavicle, yes, does in fact connect to our scapula. We have I forget what this is called. This part of the scapula that sticks out. There's a very loose, very kind of like not deep socket here on our scapula that our humerus connects into, and that's why people can dislocate their shoulder so easily. This is a very flimsy joint. Like there's not much there, like in terms of keeping this intact, as opposed to say the pelvis structure or the humerus, or so the femur into the pelvis. This can also get dislocated. It's far rarer, doesn't happen quite as often. But in sports, a lot of times people will dislocate their shoulder. Okay, this is the opening here at the top. And we have this spinal column that runs along the back. Okay, these are floating ribs. We have floating ribs, right? 2 floating ribs here on our bottom 2 dorsal vertebrae. And then we have false ribs. False ribs do not, I think we have 5 real ribs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And these guys are false ribs because this is all cartilage, this part here. Whereas the other ones have full real bone. Okay, we have our pelvic structure. It's hard to tell, but our pelvis kind of has like this kind of like bowl-like shape to it. It's not fully closed off, but again, we'll simplify it down to like an underwear shape. So the whole principle here, the whole reason we're learning the muscles and the bones is we want to know, like, okay, if I want to do a pose and I want to draw a person and I want to figure this out, Like, what does it look like when my character bends their leg? Like, how do I figure that out? If my character's knee, if I want them to kind of bend their knee up, like so, how do I understand how that pose works? If I know the bones and I know the muscles, it's going to make it a lot simpler for me, because I know that, for example, the pelvic structure, when I bend my leg, it doesn't move. It just basically stays where it is. But this kind of pivots inside that socket. So this bone just swings up. All right, that bone swings up. And this, how does this articulate with this? That we can imagine a pivot point here, right? And then this part just swings and rotates along there, and my kneecap slides down. Right? So what would happen here is my kneecap slides down and our tibia will kind of come down like so. Right? So once we know that, and then on top of that, we know that our hamstring muscles, there's a muscle kind of connected in here. There's a muscle that connects in here. It's going to kind of just drape like that. It's just going to kind of go along for that ride. And then I know with my quadricep muscles, I know where they connect into as well. They're connected to our patellar tendon, and they're pretty bulky. So they're going to stretch out, right? But they're going to kind of go like that. And then my tensor fasciae latae is going to be kind of driving this movement. It's going to be pulling my leg up. So I'm going to get a kind of a bulge there, right? My gluteus maximus muscles and my gluteus medius muscles, the butt muscles, right? They're going to kind of flatten out, right, as they kind of drape around, because they're connected in here to our pelvis and then to the base of our, to the top of our femur, right? So depending on what's there, that's going to happen. And then if the character has like large like fat deposits on them, not only is stuff happening with the muscles on the inside, right? So this would be our obliques here. We talked about the serratus muscles that connect in from the inside back of the scapula, right, into these rib cages, into the rib cage, and then we have our lat muscles that kind of intertwine with those and kind of run down like so. So we can have those muscles. We can have our abdominal muscles in here. But then if we have extra fat or whatever, then that's going to kind of sit on top, right? Then we're going to have these fat deposits, and that's going to influence the silhouette as well. Right? Our pectoralis muscles, we can look at the sternum here, and we know that at the base of our breastbone, our sternum, that's basically where our pecs kind of stop. Okay, so it's going to kind of drape around here. We know that our deltoid muscle, it connects to our clavicle, right? Connects to the top end of our clavicle and then the first part of our scapula. Okay, and that gives us that teardrop shape, and then it connects into our humerus bone, right? Like so. So we kind of get that kind of shape. So if this were to move, right, to something like this, if our humerus bone moves, we know that, you know, our our deltoid is going to kind of just go with that. It's going to drape around this form, and my bicep muscles will kind of live somewhere in the middle there, and then all my forearm muscles will kind of go along for the ride as well. Okay, so we have this. We would have our bicep, right, which just sits deep, connects into our forearm. Our tricep connects into our forearm as well, to the ulna in particular. Okay, we have our brachio radialis, which connects from here on the bone down into here. All right, which gives us that kind of cool landmark that we talked about. And then we have these extensor muscles for the fingers that kind of sit underneath that. Okay, we have this kind of like straight line here. We have our carpal bones, our phalanges, which give us each of our fingers. we have something like that, right? We're going to see this bony landmark of our rib cage. Okay, and our abs will kind of sit somewhere in there. Clavicles. We're going to have some muscles here in the back of our neck. Right, we're going to have our sternocleidomastoid here, which connects to our mastoid, and then our sternum and our clavicles. So we're going to have something like that. Okay, we're going to have all the neck stuff, like all our esophagus and all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to, of course, have our lips. Again, they cross the top tooth, top set of teeth. We're going to have our nose, which sits in here somewhere. We're going to have our character's eyeball. Right? So we're just demystifying all of this, right? It's kind of like once you understand, okay. And then the eyebrow sits on here. The ear is going to be about here. Cheekbone, something like that. Okay, and that's our character, right? Or our figure or whatever. Tibia, so kneecap, right? Lump of the tibia. So this is that lump of the tibia that I was talking about, the two bumps that we see on the knee. Right, when we see our knee, we have our one bump, so our patellar, our kneecap, right? And then the second bump here is going to be our prominence that we have at the front of our tibia. Okay, so we get those two bumps. Sometimes there's a fat deposit there as well. Depends on the person. Okay, and that's basically it. That's basically the sets of relationships that we want to be aware of. Tensor fascia latae connects from here our iliac crest, right? So the top of this underwear shape into the greater trochanter of our femur. We have our adductor muscles in here. We have a sartorius muscle, which connects from here, kind of like drapes around, and it groups the quads on the outside. We have this cool stair-stepping relationship where we have medium, high, low. Right, our rectus femoris is going to be here. Our vastus medialis is going to be here, and then our vastus lateralis will be here, and then our kneecap, like so. Okay. So again, I find it helpful. I found it helpful for somebody who always wanted to draw characters, but like was like, what the heck is going on underneath? Learning anatomy freed me to kind of understand and be able to draw with some understanding of why things looked the way they do, and how to not only just understand, but also invent. Right, because as much of the skeletal system as you can remember, and as much of the muscles you can remember, so long as you can kind of manage your proportions and you can manage foreshortening and things like that, you can recreate any pose that you want. And it's just a matter of kind of sitting down, thinking through it, maybe looking at reference, and then kind of getting all of that stuff in order. Okay, so what we're going to be doing for our assignment is basically you're going to be taking your designed character. You're going to be doing several poses on that character. You're going to do a bone overlay, and then you're going to also do a muscle overlay. Okay, so the muscle overlay will, in all likelihood, be in a separate color. So again, the low fibers here go high. Right, and the high fibers here go low. Right, so that's what I meant about the muscle flopping over itself. Okay, then we're going to have the deltoid here. It attaches here and going to connects in like so. Okay, so you're going to draw this. It's going to be a good amount of work, guys. I won't lie to you. But after doing this, I think you'll have a much better understanding and appreciation of how the body works. You know, even in your own stylized characters, it doesn't have to be realistic, but whatever it is, I do expect that it's going to be believable. Okay, serratus anterior. So we'll go bones first, and then muscles after. Okay, the bones will inform whatever happens with the muscles. Okay, and there's so much good anatomy reference in the world. You guys should be good to go. Okay, our trapezius here at the back. Okay, the trapezius muscle at the back here basically connects into this here, and up like so, and then it connects like that. So it's a pretty big muscle. Helps us to move our shoulder blades around. Okay, and there's usually a little notch here, a little spine is poking through. You can actually feel it on the back. A lot of times, some people will be more prominent than others. Okay, and then we have our muscles, our teres major, our teres minor, our infraspinatus. These are muscles that connect from our shoulder blade here into our humerus. And they basically allow us to kind of further rotate our humerus relative to our shoulder blade. So we can have our shoulder blade moves across our body. We have our serratus muscles and our some other muscles that help do that, our trapezius muscles here. But then you know, to get our arm to move relative to the shoulder blade specifically, we have these other muscles, the teres major, the infraspinatus, and the teres minor muscles. Okay, along the back we have the longest muscles that run from here to here. And some people this will be very prominent. Will be the deep ridge. We'll have a ridge down here and two long cables running on either side vertically. Our latissimus muscle here kind of drapes around like here, like so. You guys will kind of have to do your own digging, your own research, and you'll find out a lot of this stuff yourselves. But yeah, that's effectively where we're going. That's what we want to be able to do. Boxes really help us. So if you remember, we talked about doing these boxes. Once you want to do some poses, so if you're doing like foreshortening, start with some boxes. Put a cable on the box, like to constrain them together. You don't have to, but I find it, you know, I think it's helpful for students to kind of think about, yes, these boxes will actually be overlapping. Right? So if this is my box for a cranium or for my skull, right? This is the box for my rib cage. All right, and then the box for my pelvis. Draw through. Okay, and we'll instead of drawing a pelvis, we'll just draw underpants. Okay, and then the humerus again will, you know, sit on either side of that box, right, the top of it, and we'll simplify the forms into like simple cylinders and things like that. But then once we have the bones and the basic shapes, we have a blueprint once we know the anatomy on how to turn this into an actual character. Right? Okay, we can do some extreme foreshortening here. Okay, drawing through helps me get that arm in the right spot. I was almost drew it in the wrong spot. Okay, and then you basically kind of go from there. Once you have the bones and the general forms, then you can kind of go back in and say, okay, muscles, what are the muscles doing? Okay, and you would do that on a separate layer. Okay, so you could kind of, you would want to put in more of the bones than I have here. So let's get this clavicles in. So you also want to look at this from the top and kind of get an understanding of how all this looks from different angles. Okay, and so yeah, on a new layer, you'll want to go in, grab the muscles. So it's hard to tell, but this is the part of this scapula. This is part of the clavicle. So we know that our deltoid connects into those, and then it connects into our humerus here, right? The upper arm bone. Just knock this back some. And we know our bicep here kind of sits underneath that. We know we have our brachioradialis and our extensor muscle. I forget what it's called, but these two muscles that come down like so, right? And then we know that we have all of our finger extensor muscles that come underneath that. We have our triceps here at the back. Okay, we have our pectoralis muscles here in the front. And as you know, with all this kind of type of drawing, we want to find the contact points of everything. So as much as possible, where does this muscle connect into the bone? What does that look like, right? The oblique muscles here, what does that look like? As it kind of comes down, runs down on the body. The abdominal muscles, what does that look like? Our tensor fasciae latae muscle, right? That's going to kind of connect in here. Our sartorius muscle, it's going to start here, right, on our iliac crest, and kind of drape around. Our forms. Okay, our quadricep muscles, rectus femoris, our vastus medialis, and our vastus lateralis are going to sit there. Our patellar tendon, and then our patella, our gastrocnemius muscles, our soleus muscle, gastrocnemius muscle, all the muscles of the foreleg will be in there. Just like the hand, the foot doesn't have a ton of muscles in it. Sartorius muscle here, again, divides the adductor muscles here from the vastus muscles, or rectus femoris, vastus lateralis. Okay, our gastrocnemius muscles. Okay. So whatever you'll see from that angle are trapezius muscles here at the back, which you would definitely see in this case. That's going to run all the way up, down, up our character's back, like so. Okay, our sternocleidomastoid muscle, which connects from our sternum here into our clavicle and mastoid, or from our mastoid to our clavicle and our sternum, right? Bones on the face, you can add them if you like. There are a lot, and they help with expressions. The bones on the face, the muscles on the face, they generally they operate a little bit differently, in that they sometimes don't attach bone to bone. Sometimes they attach bone, right, skull, to skin, right, and they allow us to kind of frown or blink, or so it's going to be a little bit different. And there's a lot of fine, like really small muscles in the face, but they allow us to kind of express ourselves, right? We have in here our teres major, right, our infraspinatus muscles. We have our latissimus muscles. So a lot of these, just based on the perspective there, that's going to be hard to see. And here we'll have like our rib cage and all that. So yeah, so this is the idea. We have our spine. So the idea is we will be able to start simply with boxes, kind of work out where the bones would be in our pose, and then from there we can eventually kind of throw down our actual muscles, okay, in a pose. And all doing this while doesn't have to necessarily be a realistic character. This can be a stylized character. Okay, but it's the same principles. It's just led by shapes, design, right? Design choices that we like. Okay, and this is the flexibility ultimately that we want to have, right? We want to be able to draw through, right? Always draw through. When I don't draw through, I'm like, oh, why didn't I draw through? Right, so let's get the underwear shape on this guy's gonna be like really big. Right, so that far leg is gonna attach in here somewhere. And the near leg's gonna attach here. Draw through, draw those cross contour lines, and that'll really help you. Draw the boxes where it's helpful, and then kind of figure out the skeleton of your character. Okay, rib cage. Clavicles, right? So if you work your way up towards the muscles and the exterior of the pose, you'll find that your results will just be that much better. Okay, instead of just trying to guess. It's just doing your homework, okay? That's all it is. Okay, again, we don't have to draw a pelvis, we can just do the underwear shape, but we'll definitely make sure we get that femur in. Okay, and then the next step would be, same thing. Let's get those muscles going. So our deltoid here, our trapezius here, tricep, bicep, brachioradialis, extensor muscles. I'm doing this a little quickly. I want you guys to take a little bit more time, be a little more mindful, careful as you're doing it. We have that notch here, clavicle, deltoid, pectoralis muscle. Sternocleidomastoid, right? That to that. Get that in there. Get our serratus anterior muscles into our obliques. Okay, and then abdominals. And our abdominal muscles might be deep, right? So if a character is heavier like this, it might be that the abdominals are deeper, and then there's some fat deposits on top. But you can, you can use your creative license. If you're saying this character is solid muscle like Kingpin, more power to you. You can do that. Okay. Abductor muscles. Okay, but that's basically the idea. But just make sure that your muscles aren't going off into space. Make sure they connect to a bone somewhere. Find out which bone they should connect to, where they should connect, and get that connection in. All right. So that's what we'll be looking for. So let's continue on. We'll do a female character. 8 heads. Okay, and we'll just look at some of the key differences, male to female. And then continue on from there. Any questions so far? I know we're doing a really deep dive. I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so there might be some stuff, there might not. I'm not seeing it. Oh, wow, now I'm seeing it. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing it now. I see it now. I just had to click on the YouTube thing. I'm just glad the stream is working. All right, so all right. So here we go. I'm going to let's make a female version of this. I'm going to go to the appropriate layer. Step ahead. Okay. Just going to go to my onions. Just make that pretty faint. All right. So we're generally speaking going to follow the same formula. We're just going to do a female this time and talk about some of the differences male to female as we go. Again, very big generalization, but just helps our drawings read more quickly, more easily. Okay. So let me also just dial down the opacity on this. Okay. So first of all, there's a couple things we can do. Nothing crazy, but we generally want to be a little bit more delicate in some ways when we're drawing the female features. We want to suggest more than anything. Generally speaking, there's a little bit more, females have a little bit more, or women have a little bit more fat deposits throughout the body. So a lot of the distinct forms that would be more distinguished on a man will be less so on a woman. The appearance of things will be a little softer, like muscle definitions and different things like that. Generally speaking, again, big generalization. Like I said, with the eyes or the face. Okay. I used to swear by these like Dropbox and Google Drive, but lately I don't know, man. But it could just be my computer's the problem. So kind of keep the eyes the same. Maybe I'll make them just a little rounder. And then for the brow, I'll just kind of lift that eyebrow just ever so slightly. Again. Generalizations. The jaw, I'll make it a little rounder and like pointier at the bottom, so less square, right? And it'll be a little bit more tapered. Like so. The nose will just again make it just a little bit more suggested. Again, mouth and lips. Instead of just kind of suggesting it, I'll draw on like the proper like full lips. Make the lips a little fuller. It's not major difference. It's subtle differences, but it does make a difference. I think in general, just softening a lot of the forms and features will make a fairly large difference. It's a bit of a cheat, but we can make the hair like a little bit longer. Again, I don't really draw too much hair. I probably need to look at some reference for this, but okay, so we may or may not even see those ears. Again, don't have to. We can make exaggerate the eyelash, right? Make that a little heavier. Looks interesting so far. So then we'll have this neck, generally speaking, a little thinner, right? Muscle definition a little less. The clavicles here, instead of going up as much, they'll be a little bit flatter, right? Shoulders will be not quite as prominent. Oops. And so we can also make the neck a little bit longer. I think that will also help. So make the neck visibly longer. So generally what we're thinking here is, see the rib cage, right? We're just kind of like getting closer to that rib cage, than we would in a man. In the man, we're exaggerating muscles. We're not exaggerating, but we're saying muscles are a little bit bigger, a little bit more size there. In the female or in the woman, we're saying that the rib cage is here. We're a little kind of tighter to the rib cage in terms of the forms, and less kind of overall muscular definition. We're still going to have pectoralis muscle, but there will generally also be a breast on top, right? I feel like this drawing of the guy here might throw me. I'm going to turn it off. Okay, so our clavicles, again, a little bit more horizontal, less tilted up. Okay, we'll get our kind of pectoralis muscles. Still going to have the pectoralis muscle, just not nearly as prominent. Okay, our deltoids here. Okay, we'll still have that little notch. And then, like I said, we'll have the kind of fat deposits here for the breasts. Something like that. Okay, we'll continue the rib cage. Again, navel will be in the same spot, right? Rib cage will come down like so. And remember, the second headline here is where the nipples would be, right? The first one is the head, obviously. Second where would be the nipples. I won't draw them in, but okay, and then the women, generally speaking, slightly smaller rib cage, so less prominent rib cage, slightly wider hips usually. So the fourth headline here, that's where the groin would be. So we can again get these underwear shapes, but we'll make this shape a little bit broader. Generally speaking, again, generalization, but this is usually so that there can be a larger space for a baby to come out, you know, during childbirth. Okay, the knees will be the same kind of setup. The knees will sit on top of this sixth head down line. Okay, so we'll still do that blocky structure. We won't have nearly as much detail or anything like that. Yeah, I'm not looking at the chat. I don't know if I want to, but it's all good. Okay, so we have our thighs, right? Again, a little bit more curvature, like a few more S curves here in the inside. Can make maybe a bit of a space there. Okay, and we'll get the knees. So the knees here, the muscles here, women will still have, or the lady will have the same kind of muscles, but suggested. It's just suggested. It's not like anything super prominent. So this would be our vastus medialis. We're not even going to really put in the rectus femoris or the vastus lateralis. We'll just kind of suggest here with a couple of bumps where that knee structure is. All right, and then we can kind of go down here and just throw down the foot. Can make the foot a little smaller. Okay, and one thing to be mindful of is up top here for the shoulders. You want 3 head widths generally for the shoulders. I've gone a little bit under that for the lady here, but yeah, you can do 3 head widths, or you can do 2 heads turned to their side. And if you think about it, it makes sense because of that 3 to 2 relationship, right? So this would be 3 and 3, right? And if you do 2 side to side to side, or if the width is 2 and the height is 3, we get 3 units, right? If I were to rotate this here like so, so I get 3 plus 3, which is 6, and then if I do 2 plus 2 plus 2, that's also 6. So it just kind of matches if we did it correctly. Okay. All right, so let's keep going. So the navel here is going to be approximately where the elbow would be. Again, it's going to give us slightly long arms. The deltoid here will go all the way down to the second head here. Okay, and arm here, elbow, and the fingertips will go to about here. Going to lift all of this up just ever so slightly. And again, this is a more of a guideline than anything. Don't have to kind of stick to it. The hair will make the head bigger depending on how kind of long that hair is. But yeah, this is generally the idea. We're going to have the obliques here as well. And again, a little bit less muscular definition in all likelihood on the body there. But I think the big thing is just like round out the face, soften a lot of forms, tilt the scapulas a little bit further down, or the clavicles a little further down, and of course, you know, breasts, right, and wider hips, smaller rib cage, upper body a little tighter to the rib cage shape, you know, not as bulky. Can make hands and feet just slightly smaller, and soften out the form on the knees here a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to copy this. Okay, so that's generally what we want to do for the front view, and then we'll do the side view. We'll have our rib cage box. Start with that. Our pelvis box. We'll make the pelvis box a little bit bigger, a little deeper. Our head box. Okay. Okay, don't have to, but again, bigger fat deposits, so we may have a slightly larger buttocks there. Maybe a bit more of an S curve here on the back thigh. Nice S curve here on the calf, into the heel. And again, these are just simply starting points, guys. Just a way to kind of jump off and kind of do your own variations after the fact. It's just kind of nice to have a canon to work in and around. Okay, so rib cage, we'll get that rib cage in here. And we'll have our arm in here. Okay, again, we're gonna have our pectoralis, and here the breast will sit on that form. Okay. Okay, halfway with your eyes. Halfway from the eyes to the chin will be a nose or mouth, and then we'll have our halfway from front to back will be where the ear is going to be. Ear will line up with the eyebrow and the nose. Okay, again, hair could be longer to suggest that, you know, typically, you know, not always, but typically women grow their hair longer than men. It's a quick, kind of easy way to say this is a woman. Let me bring back the original. Just kind of see some of these differences, right? A little more kind of leaning into the skeletal structure here on the man. A little bit more obscuring it in the woman with like fat deposits and things like that. Okay. But generally speaking, that is the idea. Okay, make sure we have the forms of the back in there. Make sure I'm not kind of like shortening the neck too much from the side view. And again, no Adam's apple here. Here I didn't put it in, but we should have like some kind of Adam's apple as well. Sternocleidomastoid will be present on both. Okay, and that's basically it. Hopefully that helps. I know it was kind of a lot. It's a lot of like, basically you guys have to continue studying, you know. Look at the anatomy, do some studies, try to memorize as much of it as you can. And try to make sense of it. Try to understand what the bones are doing. Try to simplify those muscle, the bone groups, and everything like that. In terms of weekly activities, okay, so for this one, create a simple posed character, no need for color or detail. So take a character, pose them out. What's coming is references for an anatomy character. So that's going to be next week. But for this week, just practice posing out a character. Use basic blocks like we talked about. So the cylindrical shapes for limbs, the rectangular prisms for the head, the torso, and the pelvis. Turn them into actual forms and then try to show some simplified anatomy and try to make it work. Include a horizon line and perspective, right? Also look to include foreshortening, so the arms pointing forward or the body's leaning forward. Don't have to have detail. The proportions do not have to be realistic, okay? But that's effectively what I will be looking for. All right, so hopefully that helps everybody. it's a good solid challenge. You don't have to go realistic, right? You don't have to go like normal proportions like what I have here. You can absolutely do your own stylized character. You can absolutely do the character that you did for last assignment, and then just kind of try to find a unique, interesting pose with kind of foreshortening, some kind of perspective, like the character's leaning forward. The easiest way to do that is to basically have some kind of tilting forward box, right, for one of the elements, such as the rib cage, right, and then the head maybe can also just be seen from above. Okay, so start with these boxes, then try to work from here. Insert your craniums, right? Basic skeletons, basic rib cage here, right? Get our clavicles in. Get our humeruses in, right? Our upper arms. Use cylinders, right, to suggest foreshortening and things like that. Turn this into underpants. Kind of go from there, okay? So that's what I'll be looking for, guys. Have fun with this. Challenge yourself. Again, all I'm looking for is the attempt and the effort. Okay, so do your best. Don't beat yourself up if you have trouble. I know some of you guys will have more. Some of you will have more success than others, but I'm just looking for the attempt. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll wrap a little early today. I appreciate you guys bearing with some of the technical issues that I had, but yeah, I think we covered a lot. I think this is one of the weeks where I feel like we got through everything I wanted to get through, so that is good. All right, guys, so I will see you guys next time. Any questions, I'll jump onto the Google Meet for a bit and see if there's any last questions. All right, take care, everybody. Yep, have a great evening, guys.